What's up? Today we'll be taking a look at the difference between Invesco ETFs QQQ and QQQM. We will discuss why those differences matter and the pros and cons of each in different use case scenarios. Before we cover the differences, let's quickly cover the similarities. QQQ and QQQM are both passively managed Invesco ETFs that track the NASDAQ 100 index, the top 100 largest non-financial companies listed on the NASDAQ exchange. This is an index of mostly large-cap, innovative growth tech names. The top 10 holdings are all household names that need no introduction. Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, Tesla, Google, Facebook, Nvidia, PayPal, and Comcast. These make up about 50% of the index. So now let's move on to the differences. QQQ has been around since 1999. QQQM has been around since October of 2020. The price of QQQ is currently in the $330 range. The price of QQQM is currently in the $130 range. So this really only matters for those without access to fractional shares. QQQ has $162 billion under management, while the younger QQQM only has about $925 billion under management. QQQ has an average trading volume of 14 billion compared to the 16 million for QQQM. So just to reiterate, we are talking about billions for QQQ and millions for QQQM. The expense ratio for QQQ is 0.2% compared to the 0.15% of QQQM. You might ask, what is the point of remaking the same ETF with a lower expense ratio as opposed to just lowering the expense ratio for QQQ? The answer is that it's just too much money to give up. I'm sure they want to remain competitive in the world of lowering fees, but a 5 basis point expense ratio reduction in a $162 billion asset would be a loss of $81 million annually. Making QQQM allows them to attract a different investor base while not losing revenue from QQQ. But before you go and panic sell all your QQQ for QQQM, we need to talk about the total cost of ownership for QQQM. The total cost of ownership considers both the expense ratio and the spread. Spread is the measure of liquidity and the cost of trading shares. Essentially, the difference between the lowest ask price and the highest bid price. Typically, the larger a fund is and the larger the trading volume, the lower the spread. QQQ is so large, the spread is essentially zero. However, the spread of the smaller QQQM is 3 basis points. This can be added to the expense ratio to get a total cost of ownership of 0.18%, which is still marginally cheaper than the 0.2% of QQQ. So for traders moving large amounts of shares, QQQ could still be a better choice because of the greater liquidity. But for a buy and hold diamond-headed retail investor, the lower cost of QQQM could certainly make more sense over the long term. Does this mean that buy and hold investors should sell their QQQ for QQQM? In a tax-sheltered account, it might make sense, but if there are big gains in a taxable account, it may not be worth taking the tax hit over such a small cost difference. We also need to remember that we cannot tax loss, however, between these two ETFs, because they track the same index and therefore it would be considered a wash sale. The final risk to consider is that if QQQM fails to attract enough investors, it could technically be closed by Invesco. This would trigger a taxable event if held in a taxable account. However, given the success of QQQ, I have a hard time believing that a cheaper version wouldn't also be successful. So far, it seems to be doing just fine. As for me, I switched from QQQ to QQQM in my tax-sheltered accounts, but I'm still holding QQQ in my taxable accounts. But all my new purchases are going into QQQM from now on. But what do I know? I'm just some rando on YouTube. As always, this is not to be considered financial advice. It's for entertainment purposes only. But if you found this helpful, please consider hitting the like button and subscribe for more content like this. Also consider checking out the links down below. Down there you can get 2 free stocks with Webull, $30 with M1 Finance, and $10 of free Bitcoin with BlockFi, where you can earn interest on your cryptocurrencies. Thanks, and I'll see you in the next video.